Well, think about it. If you cannot rely on your brain, right? You never quite know, when is that great brain going to show up? When am I going to be brilliant? Because you don't understand how your brain works. What do you develop? You can't always trust your brain, so you develop your intuition. So it makes perfect sense, right? And this is why people with ADHD, they see that second glance, they can feel things that other people don't feel. And so there is something called interpersonal intuition that I believe, and many scientists believe, those with ADHD are really strong in that area. So what that means is you can walk into a room and you don't know anybody in that room. You walk into it and you can feel the energy. You know
Absolutely.
who's upset, who's happy, if there was some sort of strife that happened between two of those parties. And it's your intuition. So we don't notice. We're big picture people.
Welcome to the Angels and Awakening podcast, where we connect you with your angels, loved ones, and soul self. I'm your host and author, Julie Jancis. My journey began when I started hearing my late father before I knew he'd passed. Through my readings, membership, and Angel Reiki School, I help you awaken, heal, and master your unique spiritual gifts. If you feel called to work with me, it's your angels guiding you to discover your soul's highest purpose. Details at theangelmedium.com. Thank you, Earth Angels, for the 5-star reviews. You're entered into a drawing to win a free session. Now, let's see what messages your angels have for you today. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Angels and Awakening podcast. I'm your host and author, Julie Jancis. And friends, today we have a guest on. Her name is Tracy Otsuka. She is the author of the new book, ADHD for Smart Ass Women. Love that title. I wanted to have Tracy on because I talk here on the podcast in over 600 episodes that we've done about having ADHD myself. And I grew up in the 80s and 90s when it wasn't really known or talked about. And the way that they would talk about ADD was mostly for boys. And when they would talk about things, I would not resonate with any of it whatsoever. And growing up in the 80s and 90s with ADD, ADHD, there was this stigma attached, like you weren't good enough or you were going to be the kid that's always getting in trouble. And I was the complete opposite. I always had to have the gold star. I was getting extra help. I was doing everything that I was needed to do. And so I wanted to come on here today because as I've had conversations with friends, with family members over the years, what I realize is that there really is still a lot of stigma surrounding this for a lot of people, parents who hear that their kid might have ADD or ADHD. And I wanted to share with you what I feel is really an angel message that we all need to hear, which is all of our brains work so different. And I think that once you understand how your brain works, it can really become your superpower. So, with that, Tracy, I'm so excited that you're here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
Yay! I saw that you were on, like, CBS Good Morning, like, the morning show recently.
ABC News, I think. I think we've
Yes.
been on CBS morning
Yeah,
show. And
that's
and
incredible.
maybe I think it's also on Good Morning America, but I'm not
Yes,
sure. So
yes.
ADHD, right? Okay, you do these interviews, you do these things, and then you have no clue where they are.
100%, 100%. Now, ADHD can be diagnosed for those who don't understand it because the way that you look at the brain, you can see that the frontal lobe isn't completely working the way that other neurotypical people have their brains work. Can you tell us a little bit about this and just kind of describe it for folks?
Yeah. So let's start with what is ADHD. So ADHD is a neurobiological condition. And typically, as it's diagnosed in boys, you will see hyperactivity. They can't sit still, right? They are inattentive. They don't think before they act. and they struggle with focus. So they're distractible. And what they think it is that, and they don't know for 100%, right? They're not 100% sure. They think it's either our brains don't make enough dopamine or our brains process dopamine differently.
Mhm.
And so, as you said, what ends up happening is because, there's not enough going on, not enough activity in that prefrontal lobe, what we struggle with is our executive functions. So, what that means is we often struggle with time. We can struggle with emotion. We can struggle with planning and scheduling, sometimes with motivation, decision making. Um, the three telltale signs of ADHD, though, that I think most people don't talk about, and I think it really applies to women, everyone, but especially women, is number one, unexplained underachievement. So what that means is you'll be talking to someone and clearly, like a teacher will be talking to a student, clearly that child is really, really bright. And sometimes they'll get an A, sometimes they'll get an F, sometimes in the same subject in the same week. And so what that teacher thinks is, this is a character flaw, this is a moral failure. They're not trying hard enough. Clearly they could do it, but they choose not to do it. Number
Mm.
two, will be this consistent inconsistency where sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. And so you can have no problems in an area because the ADHD brain is actually a brain of interest. So, in an area that you're interested, you can have none of the executive function challenges that you have in other areas that you're not interested in. And then I think the third thing is typical tips and tricks that work for everybody else, things like time blocking or that just do it, right? You need to get this thing done, just do it. Kind of what we tell everybody, and neurotypicals can do it. We can't do it, but it's not because we don't want to, it's because of the way our brains work. Now, I do not believe though that ADHD is a disorder. And a statistic or a study that nobody talks about, it was out of Canada in 2022 and it was a large study. 43% of people with ADHD are in excellent mental health. I didn't say good mental health. I didn't say okay mental health. I said excellent mental health. And if you look at women like Greta Gerwig or Simone Biles or Lisa Ling, they will tell you they are successful because of their ADHD, not despite it.
Absolutely.
The problem is when, I won't say, like, I don't believe ADHD is a disorder, but there are some people who have ADHD and it is a real problem for them. Those situations, I believe, what's responsible is actually trauma
Mhm.
because trauma symptoms literally mirror ADHD symptoms. So you can imagine if you already have ADHD and you have trauma, you can have double the amount of impulsivity, distractibility, hyperactivity, inability to focus. Is that kind of a good general understanding?
I want to go in so many different directions here.
Women?
Um, yeah, women. So I like what you say that it's not just like it's not a disorder, and that those women who we know so well love Simone Biles, um, say that they achieve because of it. And I would absolutely agree. When it comes to ADHD, there's so many different things that we could talk about, but because we're a spiritual audience today, I'd like to go in that direction. And it seems to be that people who have brains that work in this way, are much more intuitive people. Why is that?
Well, think about it. If you cannot rely on your brain, right? You never quite know when is that great brain going to show up? When am I going to be brilliant? Because you don't understand how your brain works. What do you develop? You can't always trust your brain, so you develop your intuition. So it makes perfect sense, right? And this is why people with ADHD, they see that second glance, they can feel things that other people don't feel. And so there is something called interpersonal intuition that I believe, and many scientists believe, those with ADHD are really strong in that area. So what that means is you can walk into a room and you don't know anybody in that room. You walk into it and you can feel the energy. You know
Absolutely.
who's upset, you know who's happy, you know if there was some sort of strife that happened between two of those parties. And that's just, it's your intuition. So we don't notice. We're big picture people. We really struggle to learn when there's just one thing and we don't know how it fits in the whole scheme of whatever it is that needs to be learned. And so intuition is the same way. We pull from so many different things, the temperature of the room, the energy of the people, everything around us, and we take all of those things into account when we make decisions. And so what often will happen is people don't understand why we make the decisions we made because they're not feeling and seeing and hearing all of these other things that we've brought into the equation in how we make a decision.
Hmm. Well, and we just interviewed a woman on here who kind of was talking about the science behind energy, and she would
Mhm.
say, I think it was like Lynn McTaggart, that one sugar cube size of energy, um, where you can't see it or feel it, it's just the molecules in front
Yeah.
of you, holds the same amount of information as the Library of Congress, that we're just constantly flowing through so much different information constantly. And you're right. When I get into a room or just with another person, there's so much information that's just right there through the inner energy itself. Do you think that, or I've heard people talk about ADHD as being more of like the spiritual brain too. Is that why?
I've never
Because
heard that. However, one of the gifts that is part of ADHD is our high empathy. So again, the fact that we're taking all these things in is because I think we factor in empathy and emotion so much more than your neurotypical brain would. So it makes sense to me.
what about the trauma of just growing up
Mhm.
knowing that you're different?
Yeah.
And, you know, uh, my mom, God bless her, she's just a wonderful, wonderful woman. She grew up with 2 parents who were both in the military, met in the military,
Mhm.
wanted you to have your bed so
Yeah.
perfect you could bounce a quarter off of it. And I think that, always looking at my parents, I thought my dad was the ADHD one, but it
Mhm.
wasn't. It was really my mom. But she had a different childhood where she had to learn how to fit in with 2 very regimented, regulated adult parents. And so she had to find ways around that to be very, very clean and organized. But then her ADHD comes out in all different areas. Whereas me, she always says that she couldn't control me growing up, and that I talked back a lot and I just didn't listen to anything that she said and I would just go do my own thing. Um, but then she was always trying to get me to fall in line, right? To like stay in this box. I think because she felt so much shame as a kid growing up in her household, she just wanted me to fit in.
Part of it too is we balk against structure. We want spontaneity. We want freedom. We want to do what we want to do when we want to do it.
Mhm.
But what we actually need more than anything is structure and systems. But they have to be our own structure and our own systems. And I have never met anyone with ADHD who didn't also have some anxiety. And it would make sense
Mm.
why they would have anxiety if they've never felt like they fit in. So I'm curious if your mother, what she was doing is trying to quell her own anxiety by creating these systems and structures so that she would know what to expect. And then she could control everything around her,
Yes, that
you know?
makes so much sense.
Because
So
ADHD also can look very different in women. And that is
yeah.
why at least 75% of us aren't diagnosed. Because again, we have this idea that ADHD looks like that 10-year-old boy that's climbing the walls and being so annoying to his teachers, his parents, and coaches, and everyone around him. There are different kinds of ADHD. And a lot of clinicians don't know that, which is why women, are continually told, "Oh, well, you graduated from college. Look how smart you are. you brought your kids here and they're not disheveled messes. Your house isn't a mess. Your cars aren't a mess. So you can't possibly have ADHD. But a lot of us are more like your mom, who they need to control everything and they become perfectionistic because that is the way that they have learned to control their brain. So ADHD women tend to have 2 times the rate of inattention than men do. So that doesn't look like the annoying boy who gets all the services. No, that looks like the girl who's sitting in the back of the classroom trying to pay attention. She's such a good girl. She wants everybody, she's a people pleaser.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, she gets completely distracted. She's in her own fairy tale world until the teacher calls on her and she forgets, like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I'm in school right now. What class am I even in? Right.
Yep.
So, what happens to those kind of girls is, and women in general, is we internalize our symptoms rather than externalize them. We
What
are
does that
not
mean?
annoying. We're not annoying. We're not talking back. We're not, running from authority. What many of us do instead is we become people pleasers. And instead, we are inside and we are beating ourselves up. And when you have a lot of inattention, you're in your head and you're overthinking and you're questioning. And why did I do that? And why can't I do, this, which is what all my friends can do. And so what ends up happening to those girls is they get diagnosed with anxiety and or depression instead of ADHD. And if they would have been diagnosed with ADHD, and often just that diagnosis and then being treated for it resolves the anxiety and depression.
Mhm.
Girls are also diagnosed much later than boys. It tends to be puberty. And that is because what we know now, because of a few very, very little, studies, few studies, which, they don't study women's health, estrogen modulates dopamine. So for a lot of girls, they don't see the ADHD symptoms until puberty. I have
Wait,
heard situations where they see them younger, but it gets so much worse then during puberty. And when do we struggle with our hormones bouncing around? Puberty, pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, and menopause. And that is exactly when we see so many more ADHD symptoms.
oh, wow. Okay, I can't wait to go into this because did you just say estrogen regulates dopamine?
It modulates dopamine, yes. So we need estrogen to create dopamine, which is why we have what I call maturity onset ADHD. So women who, again, we can be like Martha Stewart, who I'm absolutely convinced has ADHD because
Oh,
her daughter
absolutely.
was diagnosed with it, right?
For sure.
I don't know if you saw the biography, but it was
Yes,
fascinating.
it was wonderful.
So we can be like that, so perfectionistic, and we are performers, and we are at the best at what we do, and we don't take anything less. And then all of a sudden, perimenopause and menopause come along, and it's literally like you don't even recognize. I used to be able to do dinner parties for 75 people. I can barely cook for 4 now. And
Holy cow.
it's so unappealing. I don't want to because I can't read the recipes. I'm burning this. And I'm like, how could I have been so gifted at that before? And
Yeah.
now I can't even, like, I'm constantly burning things, forgetting I'm cooking. I'm bored with it now too, though.
Okay, mind blown. I was having this conversation yesterday with a functional medicine
Hmm.
person, and she was telling me how when you are in your 20s and 30s, your body and your hormones are operating differently. And once you get to your 40s, your body, when you get really, really stressed, starts to burn through cortisol. And as soon as
Yeah.
it burns through cortisol, just for your day, just in
Yep.
one day, and it depletes the cortisol, it has nothing left to burn. So it starts burning your progesterone, which you need for mood and for energy support. So this is just totally tying in because mom and grandma both went through menopause early. And I was always told as a young girl, like, watch out for it because you'll go through it early. So you go in for these different doctor's appointments and they're like, oh, no, no, you couldn't be in perimenopause yet. But I swear, like just different way that my brain is working now versus 3 years ago is really, really fascinating. So much more mind fog, and I'm eating better than ever. I'm exercising
Yeah.
more than ever. So is and this is interesting too because my gynecologist that I've been working with has been like, let's try and reduce your estrogen as low as possible because estrogen also dives into the endometriosis
Mm,
issues that I've been having
yep.
all of 2024, where I've been in an endometriosis flare up, which is just so incredibly painful. So, with that, they've been trying to reduce the estrogen, but does that affect the ADHD?
Well, how can it not? I think it's
Yeah.
all connected as well as the endometriosis. How old are you? Do you mind saying?
43. Oh, no, I'll
Yeah.
tell you
Oh my
everything.
God, that is the perfect age because what's happening is your hormones are starting to bounce around, right? They're not consistent like they used to be. And this is all women. So what you need to think about is all women. So they did a study and they gave neurotypical women no ADHD. They gave them one group they gave, I think it was Adderall, and the other group Strattera.
Uh-huh.
And what they discovered is all women and they gave it to them certain times of the month, like right before their period. Um, and what they discovered is that helped their executive functions.
Okay.
So we know that when we go through perimenopause and menopause, we're already going to struggle cognitively, right? Because of the loss of estrogen and just, hormones being completely dysregulated. So then you attach and the symptoms are the same as ADHD. Then you put ADHD on top of that, and that's how you plummet all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah.
And if there's trauma on top of that, the symptoms are exactly, pretty similar, very
Yep.
similar. For trauma, you just pile all that up and no wonder we're then struggling so much. And what I really want to say is as much as I will tell you ADHD is not a disorder, I think the most brilliant women that I've ever met have a
Mhm.
combination, have ADHD, as long as there's not substantial trauma. And even with substantial trauma, if they have actually processed it,
Yep.
they can use their ADHD for, to be the best that they could ever be. But
Yep.
for those women that are struggling, this is serious because 24% of women that have been diagnosed with ADHD have attempted suicide. That is 8 times higher, yeah, than men without ADHD and 3 times higher than men with ADHD. Actually, no, I think it's 8 times higher than women without ADHD and 3 times higher than men who have been diagnosed with ADHD. And a lot of it is because of sexism, gender roles, social stereotypes, this idea that because you're a woman, you are better at managing the household. You are better at managing the kids. You are better at managing all the little social stuff. You're going to be the social secretary of the family. And for women with ADHD, that is often not true because all of that is boring work, right? It is really hard for us.
Exciting news, friends! Our all new membership kicks off January 1st, and I couldn't be more thrilled to invite you to join us. This year, we've simplified everything with 12 powerful courses designed to help you connect with your angels, take control of your destiny, and use your intuitive gifts to transform your entire personal world, your relationship, professional successes, your healing journey. Plus, you'll get live weekly calls with me for hands on guidance and support. Bonus for members, my January course, Manifest Miracles with Aligned Co Creation, is free for you. Perfect for starting off 2025 with aligned miracles. Non members can grab one of the limited paid spots. And for those looking to start their own healing business, join the Angel Reiki School in person this April or start your journey online January 1st. You're going to learn mediumship, how to be an angel messenger, and energy healing all at once. And as a gift to everyone who listens to this podcast, on December 30th at 7 p.m. Central Time, I'm holding a free healing for you to clear out all of the energy from 2024 and really clear out what's not serving you. And then again on January 1st at noon Central Time, I'm hosting a free 2-hour workshop where you're going to learn how to invite miracles into your 2025 and make this your best year yet. If you're ready to step into a miraculous 2025, sign up for all of this and more at theangelmedium.com/events. That's theangelmedium.com/events. Or email me at julie@theangelmedium.com for more information. I can't wait to spend all of 2025 with you in the Angel membership. Love you, friends. Now back to the show. We have to understand ourselves, our age group, and how our bodies and our minds and our brains and our hormones are shifting because spiritually, that's where I've heard people talk about the mother, the maiden, the crone, that you step into these just different roles in life spiritually as well.
Wait,
So I'm
wait,
so
is the crone when you're older?
it is, but there's something in the middle that they don't talk about all the time. The enchantress. We were just having this conversation the other day, and she
It
said
would
the
be the maiden,
maiden
the
in your 20s,
enchantress?
maiden in your 20s, mother in your 30s,
Oh,
maybe. I don't know. That's not
okay.
always true for everybody.
Yeah.
Enchantress in your 40s.
Okay.
Crone, I don't know. I'm not going to put an age on that one where we go from enchantress to crone. But what they said is that, in your 40s, you really have to look at slowing our stress, which is something that I really want to focus in on for 2025 is being very, very mindful of
Mhm.
what I'm allowing to shift my vibration and stress me out because I'm just done allowing it to have all of my cortisol and all of my good hormones. I don't want to go there. Before we move on in subject, though, you touched on something that's really close to my heart because my listeners who've been listening to this podcast for a long time know that I'm also very, very sensitive to a lot of medications. So I'm a higher happy go lucky, happiness thresh point. But whenever I get onto medications for ADD, ADHD, I've tried
Mhm.
3 or 4 of them. Um, Honestly, even ones for depression, anxiety, I always go very, very low in my mood. And if it has may cause suicidal thoughts on it, it does end up taking me to that place. What
Yeah.
have you found with that? Is there any solution? Are there more natural things to try that
Mhm.
what
So I've been through everything, that you're talking about here in terms of I am so sensitive to medication. And that's another thing with ADHD, right? We have hypersensitivities. And I absolutely believe, all these inflammatory disorders and what's the other one? The one where your body is fighting against itself.
in like autoimmune?
Autoimmune,
Oh yeah,
inflammatory,
for sure.
all of that, I think, is related to a dysregulated nervous system. Because why is it that women with ADHD, not men, but women with ADHD have such a higher propensity for all of these problems, as they age? And I really believe that most pathology, when you're talking about women, is because you are not living to your potential. Especially with ADHD, we tend to be so justice sensitive and so mission driven. We can't just like do nothing with our lives. And
Right.
when we do, we get, our nervous system gets dysregulated, we get depressed, we get anxious. And you know, yeah, that's just I'm certain that that is a huge part of it. What was your question?
So with medicine, like does every
Yeah.
like because I just
Mhm.
can't.
Okay, I can't either. I'm highly sensitive, and especially any kind of Actually, I'm not sure that I'm sensitive, except for medication that has to deal with my brain. I can't
Mhm.
do it. Can't
Yeah.
take it. Um, I cannot get the medication, like if it's stimulant medication, I can't get the medication high enough so it actually works without completely ratcheting up my anxiety.
Yes.
I think the number one most important thing is exercise. And I know people are like, I hate to hear that. But if you would pay attention to how you feel when you work out, when you're starting to work out, how do you feel? Use a SUD score, 0 to 10. 0 being the most calm, 10 being the most dysregulated you've ever been. Take that SUD score, then work out, and then take the SUD score again. Because I think we don't realize how much medication helps our brains, helps emotion, mood, calms our nervous system. And there have been studies that have been done that if you do 20 minutes at 70% of your high heart rate, that
Mhm.
is comparable to a course of Adderall, so a stimulant, and Prozac for mood. And the thing
Really?
about it is if you start your day out with that, and I know it might be really hard for people to think, "Oh my god, I can't do that." If you can do it, if you can you need to connect to your intention. Why do you wanna do it, right? And start out as small as possible. If it means walking around, the block or whatever for 10 minutes, getting out in nature is huge for our ADHD brains. We cannot be disconnected from nature.
Mm.
But if you can just start doing a little bit at a time, I promise you, you can literally change your brain. And the thing about ADHD, we have to be in positive emotion. Any of this denying yourself, forcing yourself to do stuff you don't want to do, just throw it out the door. I was just talking to a financial coach, and she's just like, throw out all of the budgeting and the spreadsheeting and just stop the shame. That does not work for our brains. We have to be in positive emotion. So if you can start your day in positive emotion, that fires your dopamine, makes you feel better so you can do the next thing that you want to do, fire a little bit more dopamine because you're proud of yourself and you've completed it, and use that workout to literally manage your day starting from your morning.
Wow.
The other thing is sleep. And
Mhm.
I was the biggest sleep denier. I don't struggle to stay asleep or to wait. I don't struggle to get to sleep or to stay asleep. What I struggle with is what we call revenge bedtime procrastination. I can't get my body into friggin' bed because I don't need a lot of sleep and I don't want to sleep. Our day's only so long and there's so much I want to do and nobody's around and it's peaceful. And sometimes I just want to sit around and do crap, right? The quantity and quality of our REM sleep is directly proportional to our lifespan.
No
Once
way.
and really, like, what we have to do is we have to get our circadian rhythm working
Mhm.
in a way that actually works for us. And that was another huge thing for me. Making sure that when I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is I'm outside in nature for at least 10 minutes. Even if I'm just sitting on the damn bench doing nothing, I am in nature and I am connecting to myself. I'm not on my phone scrolling. Um, the other thing is hydration. Our brains need water. And for the longest time, I had these burning eyes and I thought, oh, it must just be aging. No, it was my poor little brain was all shriveled up. Brains need to be plump and hydrated in order to function properly. And it was insane to me how, we have to drink a lot more water than we think, like 11 cups. It was insane to me once I started drinking water, how everything else worked so much better. I take very few supplements. The only supplement that I take, because I don't think they work and they always make me feel crappy. The one supplement that works is omega 3s.
Alright.
But you need high DHA and high EPA. So it's not any, omega 3. And there's studies that have been done on omega 3s as well, in terms
It's been
of what it does to cognition.
Yeah, it's been interesting with the water thing. I just had this conversation with a friend on a walk, right before the interview. I've had a lot of doctors say, "Julie, it seems like you're not, like for a lot of us, we're drinking a lot." But I've heard, and I don't know if you know like the science behind this to back this up. I've heard that in Europe, they don't take all of the minerals out of the water like we strip it here in the
Uh-huh.
US. And that I've had a lot of doctors tell me recently, Julie, put lemon lemon juice
Mhm.
and a good like Celtic sea salt in your water. And I started doing that and I used to feel thirsty all the time and I don't anymore because that has just really helped as like a natural electrolyte instead of getting those
Yeah.
sugary packet electrolytes.
That makes perfect sense to me because we're doing the same thing with our food,
Yeah.
right? All
Mhm.
the minerals are I just recently read a study and I don't know. I think I could be imagining things, but I think it said 60% of the vitamins and minerals that used to be in our fruits and vegetables are no longer there. And then we cook them
Wow.
to death, right? So then we cook out everything.
Yep.
We have a whole my husband is really into health and we have this whole cooking system that's aluminum grade because of all of the
Chemicals.
Teflon and
Yep.
plastics and everything that, are in our system. Well, it's medical grade aluminum. And so there's none of those toxicities in there. And it allows you to cook like vegetables at very low temperature. I think it's 130 degrees. So you keep all the nutrients in them. And it's amazing how, if you taste what vegetables taste like in that pan, it's like when I was a kid versus
Huh.
what they taste like when you're cooking in, any old pan. And it's
Oh, will you
because
send me the link? We'll put it in the show notes.
it's really expensive. That's the
Is
only
it?
thing,
Yeah.
but it is, I cannot believe and, we live in the country, so we grow a lot of our own, fruits and vegetables. It's amazing to me. We just overcooked everything. We
Yeah.
killed it all. We took all the nutrients out, and now at 130 degrees, I can literally taste each different vegetable and feel and taste that there's different, they have different flavors.
Totally. We've been doing a lot of that lately. My husband, what's that like black pan that you just keep on the stove?
I don't
It's
know.
I don't like it was just like from the olden days that they just used to
Oh,
use.
like iron?
Yeah,
Like the
yeah, like an
iron
iron yeah, that you
skillet
have to kinda, like, oil and
season?
season it.
Mhm.
So he'll just put vegetables on there for, like, 5 minutes, and you really don't have to cook them a ton, but you're right, they have so much more flavor, and it's delicious.
Yeah, but I
Um
also think there's so many chemicals in that.
Oh, in that? Oh, really?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
oh, interesting, I'll have to
I would
look
look
that
that
up.
up. I would look
Yes,
that up.
cast
One of
iron.
the things so the woman that actually has this product and she came over and what she did was she cooked water in every single one of these types of so we got an aluminum one, we got out a
Yeah,
what's that really expensive Le Creuset, is that the
yeah,
expensive one, I don't know.
yes, yeah.
And then an all clad and then all different pans. And then we tasted the water, and it was insane what the water tasted like based on what you cooked it in. And all of them were terrible, except for this particular, medical grade aluminum. Let me think about what it's called.
Yeah.
And it has this crazy food processor. It's like a hand crank thing. Um, uh, I'll think about it. You know how that is. It'll take me a few minutes and then it'll come back.
No, that's great. That's great. So I want to go back to something that you were saying earlier because
Mhm,
you're right. There's so much study out there that shows that a lot of women who have ADHD will
mhm.
really be diagnosed with anxiety. And I think that a lot of women hear, oh, anxiety, I don't have that. But then when you really start to look at the symptoms, you're like, oh, well, maybe I do. So what is anxiety truly?
Oh my gosh. You know what? Hold on one second. Let me look up a definition that actually um I mean, I know what it feels like, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What are the symptoms? What does anxiety feel like for you?
Um it's a feeling and it depends on how high the anxiety is, right?
Sure.
Initially it can just feel like uncomfortable. But I think it's this feeling of dread and fear or unease. And sometimes you don't even know what it's from. So, for example, what I discovered with myself, certainly as I started to go through perimenopause, I was like you, always this upbeat, happy, world is my oyster, high energy kind of person. And I would wake up in the morning and I would feel this anxiety, this sense of dread. But I had no idea what I was dreading. Well, part of this was hormones. Part of this was cortisol levels rising, right? Because cortisol definitely causes anxiety, high cortisol. And so what that is why I decided I was going to work out first thing in the morning, because what I know is, okay, my cortisol levels are highest. This is why I'm feeling this dread, this unease. I work out and it completely goes away. So it regulates my nervous system and brings down the anxiety.
Interesting. So, one of the things I want to kind of put this all together for folks, is it really just the exercise that can help balance out that anxiety?
Oh, no. I mean, I think exercise is the fastest way to do it, but I think any kind of mindfulness. So, the other thing that I do is if I feel that sense of dread when I wake up, is you want to get into your body and get out of
Mhm.
your brain, right? So, it's simple mindfulness. And this is a really simple way to do it is I take my two fingers and I rub them together and I am focusing on my fingers so intently that I can literally feel the ridges. Okay. So I do that for at least 10 seconds, sometimes longer. And then I step out of the bed and I want to feel the weight in my feet of my body. I walk into the bathroom, if I'm brushing my teeth or washing my face, everything I do, I am literally focusing intently on what I am doing instead of where my brain wants to go, which is, oh my gosh, you got to do this. And what about that? And what did you say yesterday? And, that's what creates the anxiety. So anytime we can get ourselves back into our body, we're going to regulate our nervous system, and by regulating your nervous system you are always reducing the anxiety.
Friends, I'm pausing for 30 seconds because I love, love, love connecting with you and I want to connect with you more. Got a question? Let me answer it for you on the podcast. The link to submit your questions is in the show notes. Also, we need your angel stories. Share your angel stories at theangelmedium.com/contact. And last but not least, leave a 5-star review and you could win a free 20-minute session. Last year, I did 56 free readings for review winners. All links are in the show notes. Thank you for listening. Now, back to the show. When you start to get into this age and people start talking about your hormones, they're like, reduce your amount of stress, reduce your amount of stress. So I've really focused on that all of 2024 of maybe I could do less and how do I change things and how do I do things differently? And yet you touched on another piece of
That sounds
ADHD.
stressful though.
It is. Well, then people are like, maybe you don't have to do as much, or you have these big dreams. Maybe you don't have to go after,
Ah,
all of them. But that the only thing that I can equate it to is when I was in college and I would take 18 hours, which is, 15 hours is a full load. Some people even take 12
yeah,
hours in
yeah.
college. When I would take 18 hours a semester, straight A's, across the board because I had to stay so focused in
Mhm,
on what I was doing.
mhm.
But the time that I took 12 hours one semester, that's where I got C's,
Yeah.
because if I give myself that room and you start to know yourself,
Mhm.
um, my gosh, your mind starts to stray in different directions. So I find that myself, when I keep really focused and busy, I don't actually see it as stressful. I'm doing the things that I want to be doing, and keeping a full plate keeps my mind on
Mhm.
track. I don't know. Does that make
Absolutely.
sense?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. And so, especially for us hyperactive ADHD women, we are chronic doers. And the deal is, though, you're doing the right thing. You are doing things that light you up, that are part of your intention, that are part of your mission in the world. And so, of course, that's going to generate positive emotion. Where you want so that's fine, but where you wanna be careful is if you're just doing, 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 but there's no intention behind it. You're doing it for everyone else. You're doing it because you think that you should be doing this, instead of really knowing who you are and becoming more of who you are. If
Sure.
instead you just added, and I don't really like this word self-care, so stick with me. What instead if you just added a system into your life where you're focusing more in on yourself, your body, somatic therapies like tapping, um, breath work, or, the thing that I always recommend is when you're really spinning and you're frustrated and you're feeling anxious, pull out a piece of paper and start writing every single thing that you're grateful for. From the littlest things like, oh, there's still green leaves on the tree outside, or look, oh my gosh, it's November and there's a hummingbird out there. Little things like that. That's how I start my day out. Like I literally look outside when I'm still in my bed and I am looking for all of the things that I'm grateful for, right? Because again, you're getting into your body, you're feeling the love, you're feeling everything that is working instead of focusing on what isn't working. And we know how our brains work. Whatever we focus on gets bigger. So if we're focusing on everything that's broken, we're just going to see more that's broken, right? Actually, this is you. I've read your book. I know this is you. You talk about this,
Yeah,
right?
I do, I do.
So is this the cobbler's kid without shoes?
That's so true. I think that I don't know about you, but one of the things as an ADHD woman that I've seen time and time again is that people pleasing coming back. And that just when anybody says any little thing, which is why it's hard to kind of read the comments sometimes, but anybody says any little thing, and I really take it in and I look at and examine
Highly
my
empathetic
life. What?
because you're highly empathetic.
Yes, and then I almost look at other people more as experts than myself, and I've had to learn how to stop doing that and be like, "Nope, I'm the one that's been living in my body for the last 43 years. I
Yeah.
know myself." And, there can be just the greatest expert that comes on and says, "Go in this direction." And I've had to learn to take a step back and say,
Yes.
"I don't have to take their feedback. I don't have to take that," because you're right. A lot of times, my daughter has a syndrome. So medically, when kids have a syndrome, the typical medical processes that work for everyday people don't work for them.
Mhm.
And it's the same with us that have neurodivergent minds. Like
Yeah.
the typical things don't work. So when people come on and say, "Julie, you should do this," or "You should think about this way," I tend to realize that I'm almost 10 steps ahead of that, and that when
Yeah.
I listen to that advice, it really drags me backwards. Um, yeah, and I don't mean to, like, put anybody down, but I think it's empowering when you realize I don't have to take everything that everybody says.
No. And, the other thing is my good friend, Dr. Christine Lee, she's a psychologist. And what she always says, and I've adopted, am I allowed to swear?
Sure.
What she always says is, so first of all, I don't go to Reddit. I don't go to any of these places where there's comments and anything like that. I know I'm sensitive. And I know I can be the kind of person where 50 people can say just glowing accolades. And then there's one thing that someone says, and that's what I'm going to focus on. So I just don't go there. And what she always says, and I've now adopted is fuck it. You know,
Yeah.
literally, when, someone's complaining about something, fuck it. When something isn't working out because, oh, I don't know, this person is mad at you because of, this and that it's just fuck it. Like so my job in life is to disappoint everybody else so that I cannot disappoint myself. And
Oh,
that is my motto.
yes. Oh my God. Say that one more time. It was just so beautiful.
My job in life is to disappoint everyone else before I disappoint myself.
Yeah. And that's the name of the game. Because if you reverse engineer that, I did a TED talk this year, and they make you
Congratulations.
do, thanks. They make you just do a ton of research beforehand. and incorporate different facts. And what I found is that it's like 82% of people plus, or no, it's like 93% of people pass away with regrets in life. And of that, that's what it is, 82, 83% fear and didn't do something in life because they feared what other people would think of them. And so what you just said totally counteracts that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as women, this is what we're taught, right? We're supposed to be the people pleasers. We're supposed to be the ones that make it right and, socially make sure that everybody gets along. And I've never been like that. I've always kind of been on the edge. That doesn't mean that I sometimes wasn't disappointed because I didn't fit in. But one of the things about ADHD women is like, stop trying to fit in. You were
Yeah.
never meant to fit in. You're actually meant to stand out. We are leaders. So go figure out where you lead, where, when you're leading, you're lit up and you're tapped in and you're feeling all that positive emotion, and go do that, because that always makes you feel better. And that's spiking your dopamine. The other stuff, trying to fit in, trying to please everybody, it makes us feel shame and less than, and it does not move our cause forward. And we're cause people.
We are. Tracy, can you come back on the podcast sometimes? I would love to have you back again. I could just talk to you for forever. I'd love for you to just share with people where they can find you, your book, ADHD for Smartass Women.
Yeah, probably the easiest place is to just go to my website. Everything's there, ADHD4smartwomen.com. Google would have dinged us if we had ass in there. And even the book, there were places that the book, like for CBS Mornings,
Yeah.
I was there. Was it CBS Mornings? I think it was. No, it was another media. I was literally there ready to go, and 30 seconds before we were supposed to go live, my producer says that we can't have the word ass. So I literally, the only thing I could think of is, I'm just going to get a Post-it note. And so I stuck a Post-it note on the back. So ADHD for smartwomen.com, that's the best place to go. And you can find the book anywhere, where books are sold. Amazon, your independent bookseller, which of course I would prefer.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Tracy.
It was my pleasure to get to know you and be here. Thank you.
If this podcast aligns with you and you feel called to work with me, thank you. Your support keeps this Angel podcast alive. Here are 3 ways to work with me. Book a session with me to hear directly from your angels and loved ones. Or my angel membership helps you connect with your angels, embrace your purpose, and build unshakable confidence. Like learning to read or ride a bike, you're going to gain skills that last forever, knowing who you are, why you're here, and direction that lasts a lifetime. Or my Angel Reiki School offers certification in mediumship, energy healing, and angel messaging, while showing you how to master your gifts and start a successful spiritual business. Now, I want you to pause, tune in, connect with your angels, maybe take a deep breath, and ask them, how can I serve as an earth angel today? What guidance do you have for me right now? How will you let me know you're near? And allow your angels to support you all day. Friends, I'll see you at the Angels and Awakening podcast here every Monday and Thursday. And thank you for listening. You're my angel.